Sponsorship. The print version of this story can be found at the aabeyondbelief.com website under Personal Stories, dated September 11, 2016. Introduction. This week, we are publishing 2 articles on sponsorship. The first is written by Ashley H. from Jacksonville, Florida, and the other by Lori A. from the United Kingdom. Both stories were written from the author's personal experience, and we hope they will generate a lively discussion of what Ernest Kurtz, in his book, Not God, A History of Alcoholics Anonymous, called The Unique AA Phenomenon of Sponsorship. See Not God, page 89. Sponsorship has a long history in Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill W., throughout his life, acknowledged Ebby T. as his sponsor, because it was Ebby who first carried the message to Bill. However, sponsorship as a recognized AA practice really got its start in Cleveland, Ohio, during the early 1940s. It was during that time that AA was experiencing rapid growth with hundreds of newcomers and an ever-expanding number of AA groups. See Not God, page 89. We recommend reading the pamphlet published by AA World Services, Questions and Answers on Sponsorship, for a brief historical overview of sponsorship and some basic guidelines that one may wish to consider before choosing a sponsor or becoming a sponsor. Additionally, we also recommend reading Steve Kay's excellent article, Is Opposite Gender Sponsorship in AA OK? Thank you, Ashley and Lori, for your contribution to AA Beyond Belief, and thank you, Catherine, for your amazing artwork. Spiritual Sponsorship, With or Without Belief, by Ashley H. Hit your knees every morning. Let go and let God. Pray when you wake up and before you go to sleep at night. Being in Southern Bible Belt country, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings seemed like every potential sponsor had the same initial script. When I would ask, "What if I don't believe in a God?" their response would always be something along the lines of, "Just believe that I believe. Keep searching, and you will be contacted. How can you not believe when you're such a miracle?" There were a few with more open-minded answers like, "Use the group as your higher power. Your higher power is anything greater than you. Use a doorknob." The doorknob answer would always get a lot of flack from the rooms, mostly in the form of laughter, sometimes a little aggravation at the nonsensical idea. While I appreciated the alternatives, I still felt like an outcast, and that I had to change to really belong here. At the point of true desperation and detestation of how my life currently existed, I stuck around and grabbed a sponsor that was as close to a real hippie as I could find. She wore a lot of bright colors and jean jackets, lived at the beach, and just had a mellow smoothness about her. She also helped me through the steps, with my version of a higher power at the time, which was nature. This idea she could get behind, because she too spent a great deal reveling in the outdoors. This woman truly did not care about my conception of my higher power, just that it worked for me. She provided hope and a feeling of belonging that I hadn't yet found, and with that, I found myself able to share my experience more openly. I shared freely in meetings from day one, just because I needed the attention, I think. But when I had more sobriety time, I noticed people actually listening more. The introduction to my shares became, "Hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm an alcoholic. I am also your friendly neighborhood agnostic. There were always those, "You'll never stay sober without God," people. But I just smiled and made a firm resolve to keep coming back to show others my path. After a year of sobriety, I picked up my first sponsee, and she held Christian beliefs and had no issue with the G word like I did in the beginning. Funny enough, we worked the steps just how the book instructs. We prayed the third step prayer, we discussed the plan that God has for her life, and we worked on trusting her God during any challenging times. Later in my recovery, about 3 years in, I had a young lady ask me to sponsor her that is a Buddhist. She struggled with typical meetings because she did not believe in a creator and got tired of hearing that prayer and God will do for you what you cannot do for yourself. We worked through the traditional steps, but the higher power changed. We focused on the collective consciousness of the group and her higher sober self. The point is, my experience shows that my beliefs should never get in the way of me helping someone else. It is my responsibility to keep my hand outstretched to anyone reaching for sobriety. No matter our apparent differences, we are still the same. I remember when I first found an agnostic meeting. There was no bashing of traditional AA meetings because we are an AA group. Just open speech about beliefs, disbeliefs, and how to deal with alcoholism on a behavior-based level. We have Christians, atheists, agnostics, Buddhists, all types join us Saturday mornings, and it has given my recovery the momentum it needed. I strive for acceptance of all kinds, and I found that's the best way to grow and learn about myself and my recovery. About the author, Ashley H. Ashley serves as the WAFT Intergroup representative and has been with the group a little after its founding. She obtained her master's in clinical mental health counseling, and her passion is helping others find a better way of life, whatever that may mean to them. She's also a recovering Catholic, and now lives a more Buddhist-based spiritual life filled with nature and meditation. Ashley lives in Jacksonville, Florida. Story 2. My 4-Card Trick by Lori A. When I plucked up the courage to phone a man and asked him to be my sponsor, there was a long pause. I thought, oh dear, he's going to say no. But finally he said, "It would be a privilege. Thanks for asking me. Just remember one thing. You will help me as much or more than I can help you." I'd heard him share at meetings, and there was a calmness and a quiet confidence about him, which I ached for. I was only a few weeks sober, and in emotional turmoil, racked by neurotic, skin-crawling anxiety, which kept me awake at night. I needed help. My first sponsor assured me that all would be well, so long as I stayed sober. Life might not go according to my script, but I would receive the power to cope with any problem. Driving home with him after a meeting one night, I was telling him about yet another apparently insuperable dilemma. As I got out of the car, he said, well, whatever you do, it'll be okay," and drove off into the night. How could that be right? Whatever I do. Even if I get something horribly wrong? It was only later that I realized that what he meant was everything would be okay as long as I didn't drink on it. I've had 3 sponsors, and each has helped me to stay sober. The first one moved away, so I asked another man to take me on. Sadly, he drank again. My current sponsor has become one of those lifelong friends which the Big Book says we will make in AA. The psychiatrist M. Scott Peck wrote, "There is something of a tradition in 12-step programs that it is okay to outgrow your sponsor." And in this respect, I believe the sponsor system is superior to traditional therapy. It's considered normal to go to your sponsor and say, "Look, I'm really grateful for the help you've given me, but I think at this point I'm ready for a more sophisticated sponsor." And the sponsor is likely to say, "I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm delighted that I've been able to help you and that you've come this far." There are not many psychiatrists who would take as kindly to their patients outgrowing them. Over 31 years in AA, I've been privileged to sponsor a number of men, and a few have sacked me because I didn't shape up. The pamphlet Sponsorship. Your Questions Answered, available from GSO, describes firm sponsorship, tough love, and a more casual attitude. I've tried both approaches. I was so desperately anxious that my first sponsee should stay sober that I was on his case the whole time. He seemed to be doing well, but then he phoned me from a pub and said he was drinking. I broke down in tears. Another chap was an atheist and could not accept step 3. I repeatedly cajoled and encouraged him to keep an open mind, and late one night thought I'd achieved a massive breakthrough after talking myself hoarse discussing a higher power, a power greater than ourselves, God as we understand him. Finally, I said, "Look, all you have to say is, I will turn my will and my life to the care of God. That's all you have to do to make a start on step 3. There was a long silence. Then, in a quavering voice, he whispered, "I turn over my will and my life to the care of God." I punched the air and mouthed, "Yes!" to myself. 3 weeks later, he drank again, and he hadn't even taken step 1. He phoned me a few years later and said he was in a halfway house after coming out of a treatment center. He was some months sober and thanked me for my help in the early days. So as AA co-founder Bill W. wrote, "Nothing is wasted in God's economy." For other early prospects dragging their feet over step 4, I used to take the 4 hearts, diamonds, clubs, or spades from a pack of cards and post it to them in an envelope with no covering note. Some took the hint, others didn't. I was so laid back sometimes as to be horizontal, and one man said he needed a more assertive sponsor to give him firm direction, so was moving on. I thanked him for helping me to stay sober. Another time, I decided to give a sponsee the benefit of my wisdom over his relationship, and my advice just made things worse. I felt hurt and guilty, but as the AA preamble says, my primary purpose is to stay sober myself and, as far as I can, try to help others to achieve sobriety. But they have to do the achieving, as I did and do. It is not my responsibility as a sponsor to get or keep someone else sober or to solve all their problems. That's their job. From time to time, someone will ask me to take them through the Big Book, but I don't know how to do it. If people can read, they're quite capable of taking themselves through the book. If they can't read for some reason, they can listen to the book on a CD or download it from the web. The Big Book speaks for itself. There's nothing between the lines. Bill W. said, every AA has the privilege of interpreting the program according to his or her own outlook, as Bill sees it. I'm not some AA super guru to tell someone else what the book means. I believe my responsibility as a sponsor is to encourage someone to live their own way through the program, not to try and run their lives for them. Occasionally, I'm asked about prescribed medication, and I say they should discuss that with their doctor, not me. The pamphlet on sponsorship says, some sponsors talk about the program in a more spiritual way than others do. However, the sponsor points out that it is up to each newcomer to determine what that AA phrase, a power greater than ourselves, means. Among others, I've sponsored a Catholic priest, a Jew, and a born-again evangelical Christian. I'm an agnostic, but I don't discuss religious doctrine, what Bill W. called the theological abstractions, with those I'm trying to help. I've been privileged to sponsor some wonderful people, many of whom are now firm friends. But as the pamphlet points out, it is the AA 12-step recovery program, not the sponsor's personality or position, that is important. Thus, the newcomer learns to lean on the program, not on the sponsor. This story is copyrighted by Share Magazine and reprinted with permission. About the author, Laurie A. Laurie A. is a retired national newspaper and BBC journalist in the UK. His sobriety date is 8/10/1984. He served on the Great Britain AA Literature Committee and edited Share, the British Fellowship's national magazine, and Share and Share Alike, a book celebrating 60 years of AA in Britain.